Hello, welcome to Elite Online Link. We now move on to the next poem, that is King Porus, written by Michael Madhusudan Dutt. It is kind of a long epic poem. If you have read about Mahabharata or Ramayana, exactly very close to it is an epic poem where you have an event that is described in a poetic form, so it is called an epic poem. This poem is written in a similar format which has simile and also personification. The theme of the poem is if the spirit of a person decides his destiny. As you can clearly see, King Porus standing with his sword, but this is a picture before the battle. In the battle that he had with the emperor of Macedonia, Alexander the Great, and how the battle goes ahead, what is the atmosphere in the poem, and how does it come to a conclusion is all mentioned in this poem, King Porus. So, without much ado, let's begin. First, we read about the poet Michael Madhusudan Dutt. He is a Bengali poet and dramatist. He was the first great poet of modern Bengali literature. A polyglot, he picked and mastered many languages. Polyglot, someone who knows more than two or three languages, like English, Greek, Latin, Persian, Sanskrit, as well as Bengali. His poem King Porus, written in 1843, is a narrative poem which recounts the legendary encounter between two great warriors, Alexander the Great of Macedonia and King Porus of India. The poem captures in vivid detail the sounds and sights of a battlefield where mighty beasts and gallant heroes clash. Gallant is brave for heroes. The battle is fierce with the warriors on both sides doing their utmost to overcome the enemy until eventually Alexander's army is winning, it triumphs. The poem celebrates not the victory in the battle but the dignity in defeat displayed by King Porus and the magnanimity of Alexander the Great, who acknowledges and honors the unbroken spirit of King Porus during their post battle encounter. When he is asked, how should I treat you? So the answer that is given by Porus, it mesmerizes, and Alexander understands what is the dignity of a king, and he knows that since he is himself an emperor, what it takes to reach or what it takes to be an emperor, and the reply he gives and the way he treats makes this entire event a legendary event. Page number 53. King Porus by Michael Madhusudan Dutt. Loudly the midnight tempest sang. Ah, it was thy dirge, fair liberty. The midnight tempest, there was a storm in the midnight, and it was singing a song as if, ah, it was thy dirge, a funeral song or tune, fair liberty. Liberty, freedom, it was your death because they were going to be captured. And clouds and thundering accents roared, unheeded warning from on high. And clouds in thundering accents, the clouds were thundering in different voices, roaring, unheeded warning from on high. Unheeded, you heard the warning, but you did not respect it. From on high, the rain in darksome torrents fell. In torrents, like in huge chunks of water. The rain in darksome torrents is also like it is the storm and the thunder together. Hydaspes waves. Hydaspes is the English word for the name of river Jhelum, and it is personified here. Hydaspes waves did onward sweep like fury passion's headlong flow. Like fury, this part of passion, now passion is personified, headlong flow, the river flows, but it did onward sweep like fiery passion, as if the river had a fiery passion. To meet the awakened calling deep, to meet the awakened calling when there is a problem, when there is a war, everyone is ready to charge. That is called the awakened calling. The lighting flashed bright dazzling like fair woman's glass from beneath her wheel. The lightning flashed, again there is a simile, dazzling like fair woman's glance from beneath her wheel. When a woman is under, her face is covered with a thin cloth, but when she raises her eyes and looks at you, it is compared to that look of the lightning. And on the heaving troubled air there was a moaning sound of wail, and on the heaving on the moving, troubled air. Now, this is also a kind of personification, and it is also transferred epithet. It is not the air that is troubled, it is the minds of the people, the hearts of the people that is troubled. And there was a moaning sound of wail, moaning, painful sound of wail, but Ind means India. Thy unsuspecting sons, thy unsuspecting, someone you cannot doubt, did heedless slumber. Did heedless, they were sleeping thoughtlessly, carelessly. While the foe came in stealthy step of death, while the enemy came very secretly in step of death, came as the tiger, noiseless, slow. Again, simile, the enemy came like a noiseless tiger, very slowly, to close at once its victim's breath, to attack on its victim's breath. Alas, they knew not amidst this gloom, this war of elements was nursed. Alas, they did not know in the middle of this gloom, of this sadness and darkness of the night, this war of elements was nursed. This war of different elements of the sky, of the water, and of the earth was nursed, was started, like to an earthquake in the womb of a volcano, like again simile to an earthquake in the womb. So everything started shaking violently as if it was an earthquake of a volcano, deep and low, a deadlier storm on them to burst. There was a storm going to burst on them, that is on Indians. It was morning, now the night has gone, now it is morning. The Lord of Day, that is the sun, from gold Sumero's palace. Now this is a reference to Lord Shiva. Sumero is a name given to Lord Shiva, and from his palace, from a mountain supposed to be made or believed to be made of gold, bright, it was shining bright, looked on his own sweet clime. The sun shining looked on his own people of his country, that is India, to bathe in its rosy light, to bathe in its beautiful warm light. But lo, but to his surprise, the glorious flag to which the world in awe had bowed, there in defiance waved, to which the flag to which the world in awe, in respect had bowed down and bent, there in defiance means in a bold resistance to authority. On India's gales, on the winds of India, triumphant proud. Then rose the dreadful yell, and then there was the sound of these cries that were so scary. Then Lion King, each warrior brave, rushed on the coming foe. Now there is a metaphor here. Then Lion King, just as the lion who is the king of the jungle, every warrior possesses the bravery of the lion. They rushed on the coming enemy to strike for freedom, to fight for freedom. They did not want to get captured by the enemy. To strike for the freedom or the grave. They were ready to die, but not let anyone capture their country. O death, upon thy glory altar, what blood libations freely flowed. O death, now this apostrophe, when we call someone or address someone as a person and call it by name by using O or OH, it is called apostrophe. So, O death, upon thy gory altar, upon thy bloody mound, what blood libations freely flowed. Have you seen people offering water and milk in the temple of Lord Shiva? Yes, so that is called a libation, where a liquid is poured as a form of a religious ceremony. It is called libation. Any liquid it could be. So the poet is saying here, oh my, oh death, what is this? How many people's blood has been poured on you as if a religious sacrifice, as if a religious ceremony, and it is freely flowing. O earth, on that bright morn, what thousands rendered to thee the dust they owed. O earth, on that bright morning, how many thousands of people rendered, they gave to you the dust they owed. They gave their lives to you because they owed it to you. Means they owed means what? Well, you need to pay back. So it is your duty to pay back to your nation or your country with your blood. So that is what those warriors did. But before the Macedonians, like autumn leaves by Simon's driven, fell India's hardy sons. But before the Macedonians, whatever they did, Macedonians were more powerful, and like autumn leaves by Simon's driven. Now, Simon Peter is one of the 12 apostles mentioned in the Bible, so it's a biblical reference. He was also the child of Christ, and like Autumn Leaves by Simons Driven. He used to write a lot of poetry also. So it is by autumn leaves driven, when there's a fluttering happening. Just like that fell India's hardy sons. Their hardy means what? Strong sons, warriors. Proud mountain oaks by thunders riven, that for the country's freedom bled. Proud mountain oaks, even the trees by thunders riven, that were rent and split apart, that for their country's freedom bled. They were like those strong oak trees who bled for their country and made on gold their glorious bed. They died in a pool of blood and making that place a glorious, a very, very respectable death. But dauntlessly there stood King Porus, dauntlessly with that same pride of a king, with that same pride of a warrior. He stood there dauntlessly, towering midst the foe, towering, standing tall among his enemies, like a Himalaya peak against Emily. So, how does he stand tall like a Himalaya peak with its eternal crown of snow? Eternal, that stays forever. The Himalaya is supposed to have be wearing a crown of snow. Just like that, King Porus was wearing his crown, tall and made of snow, and on his brow did shine the jeweled regal diadem, and on his forehead was still shining the jeweled regal crown. His milk white elephant, he was riding an elephant of white color, was decorated with many a brilliant gem. He recked not of the phalanx, he cared not of the heavily armed warriors around him, that round him close but nobly fought, that were around him and closed, but they fought with respect. And like the angry winds that blow, and lofty mountain pines lay low, amidst them dreadful havoc wrought. And among all of this lofty mountain, pines lay low. The pine trees were lying down low, and like the angry winds that blow, amidst them dreadful havoc. Among them, among the soldiers, there was dreadful havoc. A lot of great destruction was having. There was bloodshed. The warriors were killing each other and bloodshed, and putting swords and spears and all of that. But King Porus stood tall and thinned his crown and country's foe. And every warrior thinned his crown, weakened his country's crown and his crown and country's enemy. The hardiest warriors at his deeds, awestruck, quailed like wind-shaken reeds. Awestruck means totally surprised. They quailed, they shook like feathers of a peacock, like wind-shaken reeds of those tall grasses. They dared not look upon his face. They did not have the courage to look upon his face. They shrank before his burning gaze. They became quiet. They shrank in his burning stare. For in his eye the hero shone. They feared not death, but high alone. He was not scared of death, but high alone, a being as if of lightning made. Against Emily, he appeared to be as if he is made out of lightning. So much shine, so much pride, so much dignity in his eyes. That scorched, that burned all that is gazed upon. With his eyes alone, he could burn anything that he stared upon, trampling the living with the dead. He was walking with heavy steps on all the dead bodies. The immortal thunderer's son, astonished eyed the heroic king. The immortal thunderer's son, that is King Porus, astonished eyed the heroic king. Astonished, he was surprised. Even he looked, sorry, it is Alexander. He looked at this heroic king. He saw him bravely charge like his dread father. He saw him bravely charge, attack like his dread father. Fulmining, though thousands round him closed. Fulmining means royal, that is exploding with a loud sound. Though thousands round him close, there were thousands of other warriors coming close and rounding him. He stood as stand the ocean rock. He stood sturdy, he stood firm like an ocean rock amidst the lashing billows. Amidst this sound and lashing billows, they are trying to attack him, they are trying to wound him. He is bleeding, but he stands firm like an ocean rock, unmoved at their fierce thundering shock. Unmoved, he is not scared. He doesn't get disturbed at all by their fierce thundering shock. But when the Emathian conqueror, now it is Alexander, saw that with gaping wounds he bled. Open, gaping means wide open wounds, he was bleeding. Desist, desist, he cried. Stop it, he cried. Such noble blood should not be shed. Such a royal, noble, kind blood should not be shed. Then a herald was sent, then a messenger from the royal family was sent, where bleeding and faint stood amidst the dying and the dead. Where bleeding and faint stood, the people were still bleeding and were fainting. They all still stood amidst the dying and the dead. King Porus, boldly undismayed, he was still not dismayed, he was not sad about whatever had happened. Hail, brave and warlike prince! Hail, I praise you and I bow to you. Hail, brave and warlike prince! Thy generous rival bids thee cease. Your noble rival, your enemy, bids you to stop. Behold, there flies the flag. To stop here, we have already conquered on you that lulls dread war and vacants peace. That lulls dread war, we call that if you don't stop now, we'll continue the war and also for peace. Like to a lion chained, that though faint bleeding stands in pride. Again simile, just like a lion that is chained, his hands are chained and his feet is chained. That though faint bleeding stands in pride. In spite of being chained, it stands in pride. With eyes where unsubdued, yet flashed the fire looks that defied. Instead of hanging his head down, he was looking right up with meeting eye to eye, and there was no shame, there was no subdued, there was no mellowed down tone. He was still staring with the same pride. With eyes were unsubdued yet flashed the fire looks that defied, that could have defeated. King Porus boldly went, where amidst the gay and flittering crowd, the people, the warriors of Alexander, they were all cheering because they had won the war. They were flittering crowd, sat God like Alexander. He sat like a god. Again, simile. While round earth's mightiest monarchs bowed, everywhere because he had conquered most of the parts of the earth, they, even the mightiest, even the strongest kings bowed. He couched not as a slave. He, here is King Porus, he did not couch, he did not bend like a slave. He stooped not, bent not, there his knee, but stood as stands a oak. An oak, he stooped not, he did not bend his knee there, but he stood just as a tall oak. Again a simile, unbent in native majesty, unbent, tall and straight in native, proud of his country, proud of his land and his majesty. How should I treat you? Asked the mighty king of Macedon. Macedon means Macedonia. How should I treat you? Asked the king of Macedonia. I, as a king, responded in royal pride, In's haughty son. I, just as a king treats a king, response answered in royal pride, India's haughty, very arrogant son. The king was pleased and him released. Thus India's crown was lost and won. So the king, that is King Alexander, was pleased with this answer because no other king had ever done this. They all gave up, they all bowed down. But King Porus stood tall and proud because he knew that he deserved the respect, he deserved the honor of a king. And that is why Alexander understood and he released him. And thus India's crown was lost once, but it was won back again. It was nothing else, it was his own spirit. That's why I told you. The theme is the spirit of a person decides his destiny. His never giving up spirit led him to win back the war that he had lost. Thank you so much.